Hey everyone, my name is Corey Kelly, founder and creator of the Transitioning into Tech Facebook group. And today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing a dear friend of mine, Mersedyes Livingston. Hey, Mersedyes.
Hey, Corey. I'm so
I,
excited.
so good to have you. So, Mersedyes has successfully made the transition into technology. She has so much data and information and insight to share with y'all about her journey. And so we're going to be going over some questions that really mark the beginning of the journey all the way up to the point where she landed a job. So this should be a really great, fun interview. And so glad that you're here.
Me too. I'm so excited. I don't know. I'm really honored to be able to share this moment with you, and I hope that whomever is listening or whenever they tap in, they will be happy to have been a part of this conversation as well.
Yeah, perfect. So I've got this list of questions, and I don't want it to be robotic. I'm going to kind of go over them, but I am going to put little chapter headings in the video so that people can quickly navigate to the questions. So when I read them, they might sound a bit robotic.
Okay.
But the very first one on the list is, what was your motivation for transitioning into tech?
Um, so I think that this question is a bit complex in nature because of the fact that I've had two careers before I got to this point. And with that, I'll just say it like I'm 34. So I've
Mm,
lived a little bit of life and have had an interesting turn and series of events. Um, but what I will say is that I finally feel like I'm able to do what I was afraid of doing before. So the motivator was during COVID, a lot of people went through a tremendous loss, but we lost, my husband and I lost our, core support.
mhm,
And that caused us to really have to be introspective about our intentions and how we were living our life. And I know that that's not necessarily something that we want to be too deep in, and we spend a lot of time wasting it. And
mhm,
so my husband and I decided early, and we made a deal with each other. We want to live a long life, and we want to make sure that it's an impactful one. And it starts with us first. And so in that, the motivator was is that I wanted to do the thing that I was scared of, that I wasn't sure I was able to do. I have a love for technology.
mm.
I joke with my husband. I'm like, you didn't read the fine print. It's not the clothes. It's not the shoes. It was the tech. And he missed that. And so it's just been an innate tool for me,
Mhm,
um, that I just wanted to be able to contribute in that way. And I felt like this was a space that I would be able to contribute, not just in a technical sense, but
mhm.
also putting the perspective of being human first. And I really feel like that is my niche. And when we get into it, we may say, "Oh yeah, I want to be a great coder," or "I want to work for this company." But really, what's at the forefront is developing applications and being a part of companies who put the human experience first. And so that was really the motivator for me.
Mm, I love that. And I've always loved and admired that aspect of your personality. And, through our interactions, I've really noticed that that is such a strong suit for you is your ability to be compassionate and empathetic. And you just bring a certain energy into the space that is just so needed in technology. And I just want to highlight that a lot of people get caught up on the tech aspect of it and the coding aspect, and they forget about all these other super valuable skills that can really help a team be cohesive, the softer skills like communication. But your ability to come into a space and occupy that space authentically, which is something we've talked about quite a bit,
Yeah.
and show up as yourself is it just really is incredible, and I just love that.
Thank you.
Explain to me your background before your transition into tech.
Whew. Okay. Um, it's a little traditional and not. So I graduated. Or how should I say it? I'm a military brat. My father
Hmm.
moved all over the place, and we settled in San Antonio, Texas. Um, Went to high school. I thought I was going to be a doctor. That wasn't the move.
Hmm.
And so graduated early from high school, try to do all the stuff, and really just things were not lining up the way I thought that they should. But it was a blessing at the same time. Graduated from the University of Texas at San Antonio. got a degree in biology and physics. But I finished, so I started college at 16, which is
Hmm.
non-traditional in and of itself. There's not much you can do at 16.
Hmm.
I didn't get that full college experience, but then I graduated at 19. And so I ended up going into pharmacy school, even though I had a full ride to a few, institutions.
Hmm.
Um, I chose that path because that's what made my parents happy. And I thought it's what would be sustainable. And that didn't work out. My father got sick. He had two heart attacks. My mother needed support with my younger sister. And also, I just did not have the support to really thrive in that space.
Hmm.
Um, Being the first to do a multitude of things and kind of being that trailblazer, it's much more difficult than we give credence to.
Hmm.
And so from that, ended up, dropping out of pharmacy school. That was a whole emotional roller coaster for me. And then got into the pharmaceutical space as a pharmaceutical scientist, worked in the labs, worked with documentation, you name it, I did it. And did that for a few years. And then I just really needed a break from, I needed to figure out what is it that I want to do? How do I take something so technical and
Hmm.
bring that purpose to it? If the work is not purposeful, I'm not really interested. And I just didn't see that at the time. And so I transitioned into teaching, came to Dallas for a year. I taught, met my husband. He stalked me on Facebook. Just kidding. But he found me on Facebook and 5 dates, and we were engaged and got
Mm.
married, moved to Houston, continued teaching. And then we got to a point where my husband and I wanted to kind of branch out on our own, and make the most of what we have. And so we went to San Antonio, worked for Mylan. I worked for Mylan. My husband at the time was an architect. And then from there, just life is just so beautiful. We've always had lived life on our knees,
Hmm.
meaning we've always wanted to live a life of service. And our church community has always been very important for us. And so my husband transitioned into full-time ministry,
Mm.
which is interesting in and of itself. And then, he was loving what he did. And we have these roles still in society of what do I need to be doing and how do I need to support? And we have a tendency of pushing ourselves as women to the back.
Hmm.
And I got sick of it last year. My final straw was COVID happened and we had the loss. And I was developing a nursing program. It's the only like it in the world, where we were taking vulnerable populations of students where most of them were homeless. A lot of them were food insecure,
Hmm.
and developed a nursing program that when they graduate, not only are they going to have their high school degree, but they'll have a 2-year degree. And also, if they went further and they met all the requirements, they were going to graduate registered nurses. And so I felt like my work was done there. Even with my ratings with the state as a master teacher, I was like, that is my Super Bowl moment for me.
Mm.
And once I graduated that last class, I decided I was done. I was burnt out, and it didn't want to be one of those people that just did things and was just bitter. And so I took 6 months to myself.
Mm.
And there was a lot of emotions in it. When you make a transition, you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to figure out what I like or how am I supposed to do it? But no, there was an emotional toil for me because I had been in spaces that I did not feel comfortable in. And I was always trying to go outside of myself to fit. And I
Mm.
didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to fit in a place where when I'm talking about, Star Wars or I'm, talking about just my, unique passions, that it wasn't going to be like are you serious? Or, oh, that's nerdy. I didn't want to be
Hmm.
dismissed in my spaces. And I felt like, especially as a minority woman, I had been dismissed in many places, or I had been misused and my passions had been misused to see people do well. And so I took a moment, 6 months to detox from that. And there was a lot of guilt, there was a lot of emotions, there was a lot of anger that was there, and worked through that in therapy. And then I said, okay, so my husband is settled, he's happy. I don't want to fall into that typical resentment or I wish I could do this. And I don't need to wish anymore, I can. And so I talked to my husband in December, and I said, I need to start putting some stuff down and pick up my own weight. And I decided that in December, I was going to challenge myself to do and press into the things that scare me, that I was not
Mm,
sure if I could do. And then also with that, I was determined to show up for myself every day. It was easy for me to show up for everyone else but myself.
mm,
And we often think it's the reverse, and that's not necessarily the case. And so with that, I went and I looked at boot camps and looked at TikToks, and I was like, oh, that seems a little shady. Or, hey, I just generated all these questions and took a few coding challenges and really, really just got into it. And then in January, I made a couple of commitments to myself. First things first, I was really depressed and I did not like certain things about me, and more
mm,
specifically, my weight at the time. So I said, every day I'm going to the gym. I don't care what it looks like. Um, and I'm going to show up every day. And then I'm going to commit to showing up to class on time and being there and being engaged and in doing that. Those two things and begin to create a mindset and a habit that
mm,
became a lifestyle for me. So I lost a lot of weight. I'm very happy about it. And also, I gained so many skills in the boot camp, in a lot of great relationships. And I discovered that all the things that I thought I could not do,
mm,
I'm well within my means and am completely capable of doing. I've learned how disciplined I am. I've learned that I'm tenacious as heck. I don't take no for an answer, and I know how to ask the right questions. That business acumen kicks in. And more specifically, my superpower is putting human beings first and looking at what their experience is, and then working toward coding something that is going to make that experience even more pleasant. And so, long story short, that was the journey for me.
such such an awesome journey. I really love that. And there were so many things that I was thinking, wow, that's so good. One in particular that stood out to me is throughout your journey, right? You had these moments where you had this awareness that your current path wasn't the right one or it wasn't fulfilling you in a certain way. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering what was kind of your motivation for pivoting? How are you able to kind of be aware of that and then take action? Is there anything special going on that you think
I
is
think
causing that?
when you get sick and tired of um, feeling like you don't belong in a room,
Hmm.
get tired of carrying other people's weight, whether you're a wife or you're a mother, or just a woman out in the world, or you're someone who, wants to serve and wants to see people do well. It's not that you
Hmm.
don't want them to thrive, but how can you talk about something that you're not doing yourself? I'm not thriving. As a teacher, I can barely use a restroom. I'm held to a standard that is impossible. I can't make sure that a kid has eaten and has all their supplies. It is just like I could not be everything to everyone. And every time I felt like I fell short or I didn't get that check mark that I wanted based off of
Hmm.
someone who was not doing what I was doing. Um, when you get tired, I feel like you'll make a change, or you should just be quiet and just deal with what you got. And so I didn't want to deal with what I had. And I felt like um, the best thing I can do, especially having a daughter, and when I tell her that anything is possible, I have to do what I thought was impossible. So
Hmm.
that way, I'm not speaking from a place of, oh, these nice literary terms and things to say, or, that's what you should be doing. And, being the mother that I felt like I did not have. It came from a place of, I can't talk to you about something that I'm not willing to do myself. And I wanted her to observe
Hmm.
what was thought to be impossible. Um, and it's not to say like, oh, tech, and I'm not trying to glorify it. What is beautiful about it is that I got sick and tired of the same things, and I decided that I wanted to own it,
Hmm.
and I determined how I was going to make that change. And it just so happens that it came hand in hand with being able to transition into tech.
Hmm.
Um, but really its impact is deeper, and I will forever remember the steps that I took, and I don't think that I'll look back. and regret any bit of it. And so really it was about I want different for myself and I want
Hmm.
it bad enough that I'll go through what I need to go through to make it happen. And I'm not going to hold anybody else responsible. I'm not going to say, well, my husband this, or he needs me. It was easy for me to hide behind people. And yet, and still, I was not showing up for myself. And my best version of me was making sure that I took care of me. And then I participated in things that I was passionate about because then I got
Hmm.
to go home and share that joy with my family. I get to share that joy every time I walk into a workplace. It was me showing up and stop, minimizing and choosing to do the thing that and become the woman that I didn't know was possible.
Hmm.
If you would have asked me just 10 years ago, where do I see myself? I didn't have a plan for 10 years because I didn't know I was going to make it to 30 with a lot of what I've been through. But I didn't
Hmm.
make what I've been through an excuse. Instead, I used it to empower and to enrich and made it my responsibility to display and cheer others on in the process. But I had to do it myself first.
Hmm. It's so powerful. It really is. And and so what I was hearing was this idea of authenticity and like congruence between what you're saying and what you're able to tell your daughter as a teacher, what you're able to say to your students, and then actually feeling like you're embodying that and kind of living that.
Yeah, I mean, when my daughter looked at me, it was like, oh, I want to be a teacher doctor because she saw me wearing scrubs and I taught
Hmm.
pharmacology and helped, built the nursing program. And I was like, she sees me as a function.
Hmm.
She doesn't see me at my best. She sees what I do and she thinks that is the epitome. And it's not.
Hmm.
It's, I'm happy to go and play and share and cheer you on. There was just so many more dimensions to me that my daughter didn't see because all she saw was what I did as a function because I wasn't appreciated in spaces that I walked
Hmm.
into and that I worked so hard to be accepted in. And so I wanted a more holistic perspective for her and more specifically for myself, you play into this notion of, oh, I'm a strong Black woman. Well, nobody checks on the
Hmm.
strong woman. Nobody checks on the strong man at all.
Hmm.
Um, and so I had to be vulnerable in those spaces too, and not see myself as a function, but more so as this dynamic human being who has all of these components to her, who has been through XYZ and
Hmm.
has greatness in that atmosphere and is going to walk in it.
Hmm. Yeah. I, I I love this and I love the way this conversation is heading because we're a little off script right now, but I think what's so important is the this mindset that we're talking about. It sounds like you had a major mindset shift, especially after you took those 6 months off. You did your thing, and then you hit January and you hit it hard, right? Like you said, you was up in the gym every day, like you made these commitments and you started showing up for yourself.
Sweat on the upper lip and on this keyboard. I had to get it going, but it was literally, and it's not to say that these days are going to be easy. On my worst
Hmm.
day, it would be, and this probably sounds ridiculous. I don't care if you don't
Hmm.
brush your teeth. You need to at least put these clothes on and show up to the gym because it was about showing up. It
Hmm.
wasn't about how I looked when I showed up. It wasn't about how I wanted to come off or, what perception I wanted to give off. It was
Hmm.
I literally told my trainer, Planet Fitness, y'all. Where I didn't pay. Black card for $10. But it was about, she was like, hey, what do you want to work on? And I said, I don't know. My only responsibility is to show up. And she took me for where I was and
Mm.
appreciated being able to start the beginnings of building a community where my existence was just enough. It wasn't what I did.
Hmm. Hmm.
It wasn't what I did for, others. It wasn't how I looked. It wasn't anything.
Mm.
I looked tired as all can get out, but I showed up. And, as the workouts got harder and the challenges, with coding got harder, I didn't even look at how hard it was. I just was like, it just needs to be done. And I don't care how
Yeah.
you show up, just finish it, just cross that finish line. Um, and don't allow yourself to die to the spirit of comparison.
Mm. Yeah, that's very well said. I think that gets a lot of people,
Yeah.
the spirit of comparison, especially in technology. Uh, what is so amazing about your story is, like I said, the mindset portion. A lot of people who are listening to this, they've probably come to this and they want to know, okay, tell me X, Y, Z that I need to do,
Mm,
and then have a job in 6 months. And what a lot of people don't spend a lot of time on, and what I'm incredibly passionate about, is the mindset, the limiting beliefs, the assumptions, the shifts that have to happen in ourselves to
hmm.
be able to successfully transition into anything. It sounds
Right.
like you were primed and ready, and it just so happened to be tech that you wanted to move into. But I have no doubt that whatever you had chosen in that moment, you would have been able to drive towards the finish line. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we're talking about changing our mind, that is the transition. And that's
Hmm.
what leads to the transformation. And that transformation is that outward of the evidence of what was already done on the inside. So
Hmm.
I feel like you have enough grit, or you have enough discipline, and really discipline is doing stuff that I don't want to do. I
Yeah.
think about the times where I wanted to play the viola, right? That's like
Hmm.
earth heavy. A little old frame. But one of the things I like playing the viola, I didn't like having to hold my arm up for hours at a time to practice.
Hmm.
I just knew that I wanted to sound like this person or be great like this. And it was getting up in the morning and lifting weights so I can carry that, regardless of having cancer or, whatever my circumstances were at that time.
Hmm.
It was doing stuff I didn't like to do so I could be exactly what I liked. And I could do exactly what I liked. And so I think that we talk about a mindset of discipline, doing the stuff that we don't like, and we may think it's
Mm.
not related. Going to
Yeah.
the had nothing to do with me coding.
Hmm.
But it was all in the hands of I need to stop making excuses and I need to show up for myself. Well,
Yeah.
you want to transition, stop making excuses and just show up, regardless of what it looks like, And so, yeah, there is a mindset, but we often hear about transform and we have these self-help books, and we're in a
Hmm.
society where everybody wants 3 bullet points to life and then
Yeah.
comes back every week for 3 more bullet points. And that's
Hmm.
not how this thing works. If you take your time and you take it, I love, what Will Smith had said in his book. He said, everybody, was looking at how am I going to build this wall? Everyone
Hmm.
looks at the finished product, but we get discouraged because we're worried about building the wall when we should be worrying about one brick at a time, lay the mortar, one brick at a time,
Hmm.
lay the mortar. And eventually you end up with the wall that you were looking to build. But for right now, it's that one piece. So I'm gonna show up to
Hmm.
the I'm gonna show up to class. I'm gonna show
Hmm.
up to I'm gonna show up to class. And in that, I started showing up a lot different in other areas.
I love that. And the brick metaphor and the brick wall, it's really fascinating because I think a lot of times the finished product turns out looking like something you hadn't even imagined, right? Because all the learnings you're getting as you go from being present and involved with one brick at a time. And so this whole idea of transitioning into technology, it's not about instant gratification. That's
Mm,
not going to get you. That's not going to get you there, right? It's not feed me the bullet points. Let me put a couple things on my resume and I'm there. It's like
right.
it's this hard mindset change. It's this discipline. And it sounds to me like discipline. I don't know if it comes naturally to you, or what would you say? Has that always been a part of your personality?
I think I evolved into that.
Mm.
Growing up, outwardly you wouldn't know what was going on in the house, or how I felt about what was happening. Everybody has
Hmm.
their perception of what they think was happening, but I remember my dad saying one time, it didn't matter how I punished you, you found joy anyway.
Mm.
And so eventually it just got to the point to where he just didn't worry about it. He would just tell me to do something, and I would find joy in what I did. And so I don't want to say, I think that it's nurtured, that it may not necessarily be nature. There's nothing natural about doing the thing that hurts.
Hmm.
That's just not, we're all about survival. I mean, down to our basics. Why do we posture in certain places? And, why are
Hmm.
we having these conversations now about imposter syndrome? Because we're all trying to figure out how to survive in this system, however you want to identify it. And so I think it was nurtured, and I did the things that I didn't like to do.
Yeah.
And I did so with joy. And I had to tap back into that. I think that so often as adults, we think, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that. And, I just need to get this one trait down. And so I'm going to do 30 days of doing this consistently. And
Hmm.
really, I think that the best version of ourselves is the childhood version. It was the kid that was brave enough to endure. It was the kid that found joy, stuff that she didn't want to do, or the hardships and the things that I didn't understand. It was um, a lot of allowing the environment to not be weaponized against me, but using it as a tool to develop me into a person that I quite enjoy today. You know,
Mm.
even if it is a terrible dad joke and I'm the only one laughing, this stuff was funny. So, you know, um, people ask that is it nature or is it nurture? And
Hmm.
I think it's a balance of both, but I also think that it's also nurtured. If my father had not put me outside with no gloves, picking
Hmm.
weeds,
Yeah.
having to get at a certain time, would I be able to do so with joy now? Um, and joy is not necessarily happiness. I'm not looking to be happy all the time.
Hmm.
I'm looking for, do I have that deep internal fulfillment and enjoyment in what I do, even when it's hard and it's not what I want to do?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great distinction between happiness and joy. I think a lot of people get those confused, right? That there's this idea that we need to feel just ecstatic and like bubbly all the time, and that's not reality.
No, it's not. And that's why I get so mad when I see a day in the life of tech. And I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Like nobody told me about five
Yeah.
interviews to even get
Mm.
one job. Like
Yeah.
nobody's really having these conversations. And then it's like, well, why don't I feel like a day in the life of a tech girly? And you find
Hmm.
out, everybody's out here just pretending.
Yeah.
So, and that's not how I want to live my life. And so in transitions, I'm not pretending. I'm doing the work. So I am authentically as I'm showing up. And that plays into, if you choose to do a boot camp or you choose to be self-taught or you can go to a
Hmm.
4 year or a 2 year institution. I need to make sure that I show up authentically myself because you're going to get exactly what you see. And if you didn't
Hmm.
like it in the interview, perfect. It's better I know now and we have that conversation now than, me trying to figure out why is this happening? Or I feel
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
yeah, now we want to throw around imposter syndrome. And yeah, I do think that those things are true. I do think imposter syndrome is true, but I also think sometimes we are the imposter.
Mm.
Sometimes we are. So yeah.
Yeah. That's so much. The idea of showing up in an interview as your authentic self, and when you do that and you let all that go, it really kind of alleviates the pressure to fit into what you think these interviews are looking for. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people that I speak to get really, really nervous, and the interview is a huge part of the transition. And it can be intimidating and it can be exhausting. But show up, I always encourage people to show up with what you know. I mean, obviously, you can practice. Everyone, that's great. Practice the coding questions, but just show up as yourself. Like, there's so much value in just inhabiting a space as
Hmm.
your authentic self, with that confidence and just that willingness. I mean, it really goes a long way.
It really does. And I was at a place that once I'm doing this, right? I've already done the hard work. I'm getting
Hmm.
ready to graduate my boot camp. And I feel bad that I didn't really celebrate myself in that moment. I was like, so many people can do it. I minimized
Hmm.
the work that I had put in when really it was tremendous for me. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter what it was for everybody else. And when I did, I was like, Corey, I'm freaking nervous. I don't know what they're gonna ask me. There's so many things that they can ask me. And
Hmm.
you just told me your superpower is you show up authentic. Tap into that. So it didn't, that next day when I had the interview, yeah, it was behavioral, it was all that, but I answered the questions with my honest heart. And if that wasn't acceptable, or if that's not what they were looking for, it was better that I know in that moment. I knew I needed an environment where um sometimes I just don't want to talk. It should be
Hmm.
okay that I just want to sit here, code, get my stuff done, and I wasn't going to be judged, or I didn't need to worry about, oh, is that a faux pas or whatever it is. My best day and my worst day. Can these people here work around that and build around it? Am I okay with it? I got so tired of trying to force myself into
Mm,
places that when I finally experienced, now after the interview, having got the job,
mm,
um, it wasn't I wasn't hired because, oh, I'm the best technically, that's not what this interview was about. It was about the fact that I did show up authentically and I could bring a balance and I could bring some things that the team really needed. And I stopped, and this was just last week. I was like, I don't even know why they hired me. Like, look at all these people able to just crank this out and they're moving along in their training modules. And I'm over here like, well, what does this do?
mhm,
And, but that was okay. They knew what they hired. They didn't hire me because, oh, you have the technical ability and we know you can get the work done. It was about being the glue, um, being transparent and authentic. And if I could not be that in that space, I didn't want it, because I'm just tired of trying to pretend to be anything other than what I am.
mm. Yeah. And that's exactly what you said had been the issue with the previous spaces that you inhabited, right? You got
Yeah.
there and you realized, wow, this isn't even actually what I wanted. And this is an interesting point about people who are thinking about moving into technology. A lot of people, um, they get bent out of shape on deciding what part of technology they want to go into. Do they want to be full stack? Do they want to be a front end developer? Do they want to be a data analyst? And they get analysis paralysis with that, and they just want to find out every little detail. And if we go back to that brick wall metaphor,
Hmm.
when they build it, it's going to look different. I've talked to so many people who they just show up and they start to learn more about technology and the space. And as they do that, they say, oh, actually, this area is more appealing to me, or my skill set aligns more with this area. And it's that authentic awareness of your unique skills combined with taking action that leads you down the path of manifesting a space that is actually a good fit for you. You shouldn't have to hustle. You shouldn't feel like you're hustling for acceptance, or, if you're in an interview and you just feel like you're just kind of hustling in that space, that's going to get you a place where you're going to get the job in tech and you're going to look around and you're going to say, wow, this sucks just like my old job. This is the
Yeah.
same. It's the same
Yeah.
crap.
I
And
mean,
so,
everybody has their hot mess. You just got to pick your favorite one. I'd say that
yeah,
whether it was with, the person that you choose to do life with, or, the thing that you got to spend 8 to 9, even more hours doing, pick your
yeah.
favorite hot mess and keep it rolling. And I think it brings me to one of the things of when we're talking about transitioning, we're looking at other people's Super Bowl moments.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I've settled on what looks like my Super Bowl moment is not going to be with the next person. I'm not looking to work at Google or Facebook. I no,
Yeah.
that's not because those environments is not where I'm at right now, and it's not what I want right now. Might I change my mind in 5 years? Quite possibly, but for right now, it's not what I want. So my Super Bowl moment is the fact that I can work at a place that deals with what I love to do, traveling, and I'm like, oh, I've
Hmm.
had that experience, and I can relate to what the everyday person goes through, and it makes me even better at my job because again, I'm putting that human experience in this specific, brand,
Hmm.
and I'm saying, okay, if I'm in their shoes, what needs to happen? And I'm working towards that. And it keeps me motivated. This is not about a checklist. It's not about a check.
Hmm.
Although we do need to get paid.
Hmm.
People got to eat, bills got to be paid, taxes got to be paid. We got so much. But I'd say that, I'm not thinking about commas and dollar signs only get you so far. But what keeps me up late at night and what keeps me
Hmm.
going in the morning is the thing that, I care about. What is this person's experience? And I think that as a developer, it makes me um, have a foothold in a perspective that is unique because I'm thinking in that way.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just strange to me. Like, how can you code without empathy? Like, you're doing this so that people can have a product. Is so much ego, and it has nothing
Hmm.
to do with us. Nothing to do with us. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think we need to stop looking at other people's Super Bowl moments. Someone would say, "Oh, well, you just got started, or you don't know this, or how can you be happy in this space, or just doing this thing?" Well, that's my moment. It may not
Yeah.
be, and I'm okay with that. And I think that's part
Hmm.
of the transition too. Is I don't want to look at the other person and, oh, look at this person. They made it to being a senior dev in 3 years. Okay, I'm gonna get there. But right now, I'm gonna enjoy my process. So,
Hmm.
I'm laying one brick at a time, and I'm not worried about the fact that they already got their wall. Their process is going to look much different, and what I bring to them might be their blind side, and my success is their success, and vice versa. So, I think that's another thing when we're talking about transitions is we need to realize what our Super Bowl moment is and be
Mm,
okay.
yeah. And to own it, right? I think that's really important, because you can't look for other people to celebrate that moment for you.
No.
Because the people in your life, they might be on your side, they might say yay, but a lot of times in tech and just in general in life, the ego and imposter syndrome are two sides of the same coin. And a lot of times in tech, that imposter syndrome drives people to act out of ego. And it's a special thing for someone to build you up and celebrate you in tech. Based on the experience I've had and what I've seen, is that's a rare quality. And so that empathy and that human aspect that you're bringing to the table, not everyone has that. And everyone can, in my opinion, if they work hard enough, everyone can learn how to code. That's a skill that you can get. But your unique experiences and the things that have crafted you and brought you to this point, that's your value add. That's the incredible power that you bring to the table. And I love that you have that awareness and you're able to tap into that, and you're not losing focus of that, because that's where the real value is. That's what's going to change and transform the company. That's what's going to add value to the company. It's
Yeah.
not someone over here that can just crank out 100,000 lines of code. I've worked with people like that, and they might crank out a lot of code, but they're a nightmare to work with, right? And no one wants to spend time or space with them.
Right.
And so,
Yeah. I think it's those micro wins. It's I every morning, when I sit down, it's not the first thing I'm doing is not, oh, this is I stayed up late and I did this, whatevs.
yeah.
Um, it's what am I going to do today? What did I do yesterday? Okay, I did this yesterday. Okay, these are going to be my wins today. And you
Hmm.
know what? If I don't check off every single thing on this list, I still won today. Because I showed up, I tried, and I made progress from yesterday. And I think even if you have those days that you're like, I'm not sure what I'm doing,
Hmm.
did I do this well? I think of it this way, and this really encouraged me, is that I was sitting and I was just having a moment. My best victories was with my face wet and snot in my nose,
Yeah.
crying. I'm trying to code something, and
Mm.
my instructor, Casey, he was just wonderful, and he took me for what I was, and those were the wins for me. Was I didn't stop putting my hands to those keys, and I didn't stop going to the gym even when it got hard. So I never stopped showing up for myself, and so I think those micro wins are super important. So I think that we get so used to trying to check off these boxes, or I need to do this,
Hmm.
or I saw this person do that. Part of the problem is that we always think that someone else's grass is greener than ours, but we don't know how much crap is full of,
Hmm. Yeah.
And so just stick to what you got, water your lawn, let it be what it is, and just do the work. I just think that in this space, part of that imposter syndrome is that we live in the society of comparison.
Hmm.
And we think that that drives capitalism. It's just the American way. I don't know. I was born in Germany. We were chilling, minding our business. But
Yeah.
I think that when you speak of imposter syndrome, I think the other coin to that and what drives the ego is I check it with, yeah, sometimes I am the imposter because I
Mm.
don't know that thing, but I'm going to work at it to get to know it as best as I can. And that's the other side that, yeah, I am the imposter, but let me be humble and let me just take
Yeah.
this ability and this learning session or this learning journey. And then I'm confident I will land exactly where I need to be.
Mm. The awareness of being the imposter breaks you free of imposter syndrome. I mean, there is a humbleness to moving into technology. So I
Yeah.
love that. And so this theme keeps coming up of showing up, and I love that theme because you have to do that on a daily basis. And I'm wondering, for the people who have a hard time with discipline, for the
Mhm.
people who maybe don't have the same shared experiences you and I do about how discipline can pay off, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's a little nervous about, being that disciplined with themselves and their time?
Um, I think that's a good question. I think that's, there's so many people be like, oh, listen to motivation videos. There's a
Hmm.
difference. Being motivated is an emotion.
Hmm.
Being disciplined, there's action to it. And so, with that being said, if you want to be disciplined, start taking action, no matter how big or how small. Um, so it's something simple. In my case, it was going to the gym every day,
Hmm.
regardless of how I felt, making sure I got there by a certain time so I could be in class by a certain time. Um, and that small thing is I'm not in the boot camp anymore and I'm working, but you better believe I'm in the gym doing the thing that I don't like because
Hmm.
I want to see a better version of myself. Um, I think that we need to start taking action on the things that inspire us. For instance, if I can envision myself somewhere, and I feel like I get this vision of seeing myself somewhere, I
Hmm.
got a limited time to take action and figure out what I need to do. I may not know exactly how I need to get there, but I'm gonna
Hmm.
get, we got something called the internet. I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna figure it out. And then after I get that curiosity, I'm gonna start
Hmm.
acting on those points of asking the questions, no matter how dumb they sound. Um, because oftentimes, if you're the one that's brave enough to ask the question, you'll find that several people have it. And I know we hear that frequently.
Hmm.
So when you get that inspiration, take action. Don't wait. Get up, start asking a question, start writing things down, and it won't leave you. And I would say the other part of that is put people around you who are truly for you.
Hmm.
When I started the boot camp and I started working out, it was me and my husband. I didn't even tell, my favorite aunt. I didn't tell
Hmm.
anybody what I was doing because I did not want to be inundated with their influence or what they thought
Hmm.
should be or what, oh yeah, or I read this. I didn't want to be influenced. It's kind of like that those moments for me and the work that I did was kind of like if you have a great artist who's making music. They're in the basement somewhere. They don't want to listen to anybody else's stuff because they don't want to be inundated with, well, what do they do and how do I need to do
Hmm.
it? They want to show up in raw form and see what they can produce. So I stopped talking about what I was doing and I clapped for my damn self. I don't care if it was one line of code of hello world or if it was like I can actually tell you what an interface is and I can tell you how to do a dependency injection and or I can tell you how this is applicable to this enterprise or what I'm thinking
Hmm.
about for the business objective. Yeah, that's now. But what it was is I stopped talking and I started doing. Um, we have a society that does a lot of talking, and people talk not as they are, but as they wish they were.
Hmm.
So when you start talking about what you wish you were, you get this disillusionment and also discouragement that happens. Whereas when you start taking action on the things that inspired you, and then you put the proper people around, they may not look like where you've been or where you're trying to go,
Hmm.
but really, in my case, praying for, I need that circle. So it looks like my trainer, Ashley, who said, okay, how you show up is how you show up. And I'm going to do
Hmm.
my job. She did her job. Casey and Rye and, even my classmates when I would get, down on myself. Um, or they thought I was crazy for, doing something, it was surrounding myself with people that may not look like what I think success should be,
Hmm.
or even, have my story. But removing those biases so I can get where I gotta go. And so I think that once you have that inspiration and you move into action, and then, it's like the proper people come around, you also have to
Hmm.
know what they're for. My trainer is not for teaching me how to code. My
Hmm.
instructor is not about to sit here and tell me I need to get on the stairs and do 5 minutes of level 9. Like he's just not going to do it. He may have just rolled up bed himself, but put people in their proper place and stop
Hmm.
talking to what is familiar. Stop, believe. And also when you're in it and you're working hard, for me, I had to be a bit disillusioned a little bit and see myself sitting at the desk doing the things that I wanted to do. And one of the things. that my husband would encourage me with is prepare to be sick of me. I'm
Mm,
about to be relentless, like unrelenting, excuse me, unrelenting
hmm
in my pursuit. I don't care if you're annoyed with my questions. Your opinions have nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. Just
hmm
I'm gonna keep on going. And so that be disillusioned. I believe that I can do this. It's like this. The Wright brothers thought, okay, if I bend metal in this way and I put people in the middle, we'll be able to fly. Well, now we got airplanes, but in the moment that they were doing it, people were
hmm
like, "You're crazy. What are you talking about?" But now we got airplanes. So I think that all came from inspiration. And I don't think that it is not without reason that we have an imagination and that we are inspired by these various things to take it on. And that's also one of the things that I admire about the younger generation as well. Is that they do the things that sound crazy and they're
mm,
just fantastic and they don't take anything in, they don't back down. And I think that me being in the classroom seeing these kids, one of the things
hmm
is I told them, when you show up, that's 50% of the work at least. The rest
hmm
I got you on because that's my role, but I just need you to show up and be consistent. And so how can I then say that in the classroom but not do it for myself in this process? And so inspiration, move into action, put people around you who are going to help you get where you got to go. And
mm,
also, don't just take, figure out how you can also give. Like when I
mm,
met you, I couldn't do anything, for you necessarily, like, oh, Corey, I got this job or I got this or whatever. I couldn't do that. But what I could do is say, you need a review, Corey.
yeah.
You, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? And that
Mm,
question changed a lot of conversations for me.
yeah. Tons of nuggets in there. Like the idea of taking action, I just absolutely adore that. And I think there's so much truth to that. And even if you don't necessarily know where you're going, just take the first step. Just take the first step. Curiosity, right? You said you were curious. That's such an important ingredient. Having a network of people who are supporting you and aren't like that toxic energy where maybe congratulate you, but behind your back they're thinking, what are they doing, or what
Mhm.
what are they thinking? But then the other thing that stood out about your response was the idea of like visualizing the dream and not limiting yourself to maybe your current ways of thinking. And
Mhm.
that is huge. And that's actually a really powerful coaching technique that is used in a coaching space. And I just want to briefly share one of my personal stories that I had a lot of success with visualization. And
Yeah.
it's so powerful and important to me. And I love using it on my clients. But when I had my own coach, she had asked me to visualize my future. And this is something I had never even done before.
Mhm.
I didn't even allow myself to take a moment to look at what my future might be like. And so it felt really uncomfortable at first. She was like, we're going to breathe together. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to just walk through a day in your future and what that might look like. And so I started like even the thought of it was just really uncomfortable. I started allowing myself to see these things that I really wanted, but for some reason I had blocked myself from
Mhm.
accessing. And one the scene that is most vivid to me is that I always wanted to be married. I wanted a family. That's a huge thing to me. But as a gay man growing up in Alabama, I had developed all of these preconceived notions about what was meant for me.
Mhm.
And in that visualization technique, I was laying on the bed and I was reading a book and I saw my partner come out of the bathroom. They were just brushing their teeth. Like it was just the most normal thing, but they were just brushing their teeth and we were talking about the end of our day. And I just allowed myself to completely embody that moment and be there in that space in this dream of mine.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you how much that visualization changed things. And then I met my current husband a month later. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to say like it was the visualization that did it, but that unlocked something for me. And so to anyone that's listening, I encourage you to do that exercise for yourself. And how does that relate to your transition into tech? How might you be limiting your experiences or your dreams or that job that you could have because of maybe what you've been told or the way you grew up or
Yeah.
these things that family may have told you, uh, you know the narrative could be, I'm not meant for that space, or it's not for me.
Mhm.
But it is. Just take that moment and occupy it in your mind and see what changes. And I
Yeah.
just,
And what you shared, there's two things that I think about. And this is something that, I tell my husband, um, in certain moments where maybe he's looking for, something or some inspiration. I'm like,
mm,
pick your head up, look around,
mm,
and realize that your miracles are in the things that are mundane.
yeah,
We're often looking for that, oh, we built a rocket and we're going to the moon.
hmm
But what about those small steps that it took to do that? Um, there's so many things that we overlook because it's not that zero to hero type
mm,
thing, or
hmm
it's not this. I don't know. I just feel like we don't appreciate the mundane things because it's in that, that interaction that I might be having with my kids, or, spending
mm,
that I get most inspired, not because I just have kids, but it could be a conversation that would just did my heart some good, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so the other thing to that is when you visualize, you're killing that comparison. Comparison is, gosh, is something else. It's a killer of dreams.
mm,
How would I have known these things were possible if I'm always looking in any other direction but what's around me, and what I have? And it's like one of those things that, I used to I tell my husband is, so many people get mad because they're like, oh, I'm trying to manifest or I'm praying for,
mm,
whatever
hmm
walk of life you choose. Um, we're like, oh, we want a table. And we get mad when we're provided with the tree.
yeah,
The tree is you need to go and you need to process that thing to make the table that you want to sit at, that you want to
hmm
invite others at. And we miss it because we're not grateful for what our hands hold,
mm,
or what is in our minds. And that is the things that we don't appreciate. We think that there is a flaw in our design and we're perfectly fine the way that we are. We just need to figure out how to work with it, get comfortable with what's uncomfortable, and then
hmm
also not trying to take everybody with you. When I went
yeah,
through the process, it was personal. It was me and my husband that knew what was going on. And that was it. So when he finally he was like, "Hey, can I put it on Facebook?" I was like, "If you want to."
yeah,
Like, people were like, "Oh, I had no freaking idea." Yeah, I meant
hmm
for that because I wanted
yeah,
this to be, I wanted this purification process. I wanted to be able to appreciate the mundane things of saying, "Hey, I
mm,
wrote Hello World today," or "I learned how to build this application," or "Man, my design was bomb for this weather app."
hmm
Everybody got a freaking opinion, but we're not celebrating what we committed to put our hands to, and then we become displeased and we throw the whole thing away. So then we end up
mm,
never really transitioning or getting to that transformation that we saw for ourselves. We allow the idea and the ideology, no, the idolatry of
mm,
greatness
hmm
steal the hope and the bit that we have. Um, and so I think that what you talked about was you appreciated the mundane things, and those were your miracles,
hmm
or they became your miracles. And then you just, I don't know, it's just like the thing that I think about the most, and that's what's valuable and that's what's important. And I think yeah, a comparison is a killer of dreams. What my Super Bowl Sunday is not yours, and that's
hmm
okay. And yeah, sometimes we just need to figure out how to just shut everything off and just get real focused about
mm,
what it is that we're putting our hands to and appreciate what we've made.
yeah. That's so the idea. I had an insight while you were talking, and I was like just processing it to myself. But the idea, I think there's something about our vocabulary that's important as well, because you mentioned the mundane things, and to me, mundane has a feeling associated with it.
Mhm.
And the word mundane to me, it doesn't feel good. Like it feels boring, or it's dark and gray. And I think it's interesting that we call those things mundane. I mean, and I do it too, right? And yet that's where the beauty is. That's where the blessing is. That's where the potential is. And so I'm wondering what else could we call that? What else could we call those things
I think we just
besides mundane?
yeah, I think we just call it existing.
Yeah,
I mean, really, right? Your partner was sitting there brushing his teeth. He was
yeah,
just being, and we don't appreciate enough of what it is to be. It doesn't mean that we don't have, plans for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're not
yeah.
inspired. It doesn't mean that we're settling. I think it's literally just existing, just being exactly as we are
Mm,
and sitting in that. I think most people don't like themselves, so they don't want to sit too long. But that's
mm,
where change can happen. Um, that might be the little bit of water in the popcorn kernel that gives us that different form when we're done. The
yeah.
microwave, I
Mm.
don't even like popcorn. I don't even know why I said that. But yeah, I don't like popcorn. But
Where did a little water in the popcorn? I've never heard that. That's
you didn't know
so,
that?
no, that's hilarious though.
Come on, Corey. What do you think it is
Oh,
when you go to the movies? So my kid had asked me, he was like, Mommy, why does the popcorn look like this? But when it
yeah.
comes out, it's this delicious thing.
Mm,
And I was like, I have no idea. Here's the mundane moment. He's asking me about why a kernel is now popcorn. Most people don't
yeah.
think about just putting it in our mouths and just keep it moving. Um, and so I was like, let's go look it up. His curiosity inspired me to
Mm,
come up with an answer. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I did not know that what they do is they put a drop of water in the kernel, and it's not the external that's being heated up and transformed.
mm.
It's what's happening on the inside.
It's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
But the seed is mundane. You wouldn't think about that. And you're not
Yeah,
thinking about the process that it goes through. It's not, we often think, oh, it's because the outside heated up and then pow. If that was the case, I'd go outside and I'd be skinny,
yeah.
but that's not what's happening. I had to work on an internal process and change my mind
Mm,
about what it is that I wanted for myself. And now I'm the popcorn that's to be desired,
yeah. Hmm. You
with the, bu-
popped
with the butter.
with the, with the butter. That's such a nice parallel and the tie back to the whole theme of this conversation, which, obviously I had this list of questions and it has turned really into this focus on the mindset and the shift.
Mhm.
And yes, we could have spent our time during this interview talking about the boot camp you went to or the tech that you learned or the ways that you updated your resume and your LinkedIn and we can talk about that sometime. But what I think is incredibly valuable and way more valuable than all that is the stuff that we've talked about today. And when people come to my Facebook group, they're asking a lot of these questions like, what language should I choose? How do I get started? How do I pick a direction? And these are all valid questions. These are all valid questions. I mean, pursue these, have the curiosity,
Mhm.
but realize that the real work, just like that popcorn, like the water's got to get in there, right?
Mhm.
It's an internal thing that has to happen. It's this mindset shift that has to change. You have to want it. You've got to be disciplined, and
Mhm.
and and you have to be committed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, if you want to find out boot camps, you can look at the data and figure out who's really successful, or you can, get reviews and you can get people's opinions. But these are the things that people are not talking about, who are
Hmm.
really trying to transition to transform.
Yeah.
These are not the conversations that's being had. People see, I was a cook and now I'm a developer, or I was
Hmm.
laying brick, or I was putting roofing on the house, or I was in the military and now I'm doing this. We're not talking about the in between, and we don't value the in between, but the in between is all the conglomerate of experiences that have not
Mm.
been listed that made you in the moment that you can say, I am.
Yeah.
And so we're not thinking about that. Someone's like, oh, what language should I start with? The one that gets you where you need to go.
Hmm.
If you want to, do you want to build, what do you want to build? And then from there,
Hmm.
go there. There is not one best language, there is not one best boot camp. And that was another thing in this process. I did not, I did not make code up responsible for my results.
Hmm.
And that's the other thing, is we're so used to saying, well, if I give you this thing and I give you money, then I need to be here. No,
Yeah.
that's would be a sitting duck that way. If I own my future and I own the process, I'm going to get the results that I seek.
Hmm. Yeah. That's really huge. And I think that's just such an important thing. And like you said, people aren't really having these conversations. These conversations don't get the clicks or the views, right? Because they're not three quick tips to transition into tech, or and you see those a lot. And what I tell everyone who asks for my advice is there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. If there wasn't more to it than that, then we would have a lot more people in tech.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I definitely believe that to be the case, but yeah, you want to find those answers, you're going to find them. You can do the work
yeah.
just like everybody else. Again, that's that inspiration to action. If you have a question, go find your answer, or
Hmm.
ask somebody. But I think that this was the part that was frustrating for me is, yeah, I'm seeing you having tea and you only worked for 1 hour or you had a couple of meetings, but nobody's
Hmm.
really talking about how, okay, now I'm done with the boot camp, or I'm going to be done with the boot camp. Okay, where do I want to work? How am I going to choose the environment I'm going to thrive in? How does my
Hmm.
resume need to look? What people do I need to have around me? I'm walking in, and I have walked in unfamiliar territory. So I need people around me who can equip me with how do I handle, that coworker who's maybe got displaying some microaggressions without going off.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
do I navigate negotiating salary, or how do I navigate, my next steps? I can't put what is familiar around me in unfamiliar spaces.
Hmm.
I have to be willing to be brave and courageous enough to take the steps that I have not seen to get the
Hmm.
results that are different. And I think there's too many of us talking about what we want to do or who we want to be, and not
Yeah.
enough of us saying, you know what, I'm gonna shut all that out. I got who I need right here, and then we're just gonna get to work. And I've just gotten to a point to where, if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. And if you were part of the process, I'm forever grateful. And not everybody who's a part of your process is supposed to stay. But
Hmm.
part of me choosing to say, hey, Corey, like I saw you had put this and, I want to talk to you and here's my resume and this, that, and the third. It wasn't about the resume. It was about you giving me one yes, and one yes in
Hmm.
an hour was a conversation that now we've had several sessions. And from then you've watched me go from, Corey, I'm having a really bad day and this is hard, to thriving, back to, Corey, this was, I don't even know what happened this week. And there's these ups and downs, but have it
Hmm.
being be in spaces that are unfamiliar and be transparent and authentic.
Hmm.
That makes
Yeah.
me more courageous than being excellent in something that's familiar.
Hmm.
And that's why we walk around unfulfilled, because we're not willing
Yeah.
to do the thing that scares us the most to get the results that we want.
Yeah. That's so well put. It's that courage, that willingness to step into the uncomfortable.
And get comfortable with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and I think that's what is really stops people from making that first move. That idea of that fear, the fear of failure, the fear of moving into something that you aren't well equipped to do at the time. If you continue to do things the way that you're doing them today, you're going to get the same results that you've been getting up until today. And a lot of people don't grasp that. They try to come into this transition doing things the exact same way, with the same mindset, with the same schedules, with the same way of viewing the world. And these things got to change. They just have to change. And it's going to
Mhm.
be painful. It hurts. Like these are ways that you've been operating and navigating the world your entire life. That's why I really am so passionate about coaching and mentoring, because it gives a space to pick these things apart, to say, why am I thinking this way? Or why, when I get home from work at 5, do I just want to watch TV instead of think that I might have the energy to work on this? And so stepping into that fear, stepping into that discomfort, doing things that scare you,
Mhm.
hopping on a call with a stranger. I mean, that's terrifying for a lot of people. It is.
Yeah, I
And
don't
and
know how many
and
times I had tears in my eyes, like, Corey, this was rough, or
yeah.
whatever. But you know, um, a transition, is quite something, and it's just the beginning of your transformation. And
Mm.
that's what I love. And that's what you coach and you mentor for is you're not just trying to get me to a point and say, okay, you're done. But
Yeah.
you're really trying to see a best version of myself show up in this space, take up that space and
Mm.
continue to grow and inspire others, you know. And that's what I love about what you do is, you know, we have laughs just like we have tears.
Hmm.
And then, you know, I love the fact what I love about you the most is that, well, not the most, I like a lot of things about you, but
Oh.
but what I like is that you don't let me sit by myself in what it is that
Mm.
I'm feeling.
Hmm.
Um, you come with me, and then when I have that moment, you don't let me stay there either.
Mm.
And there's not a lot of people even on the other side of it. You know, you've had many years of experience in being in tech and you know, so much wisdom and that I could glean from. But what I love the best is about that you're willing to go with me and then we don't stay there. We figure out where we're going to travel to next. And I
Mm.
think that is so important, whether it's a coaching or mentoring relationship or just period in this journey. It's about you don't build a house in the desert. You
Hmm.
just don't. You know, you might pitch a tent there, but then you know you need to keep it moving because that is not where you're supposed to stay. That's why there's hardly any life there.
Mm.
Um, and so I think that too many people are trying to build houses in the desert and we're not willing to say, you know what, I'm just gonna, you know, sit here for a second and then I'm gonna pick my stuff up and I'm gonna get where I gotta go. And so I think that that's what's beautiful about the coaching and the mentoring sessions that I have with you and
Mm.
just who you are as a person. I knew it was real when you said, we're just going to sit in this moment and this moment can be whatever you want it to be, you
Hmm.
know? And so I think that that is heavily appreciative and it's things I wasn't necessarily getting. It's not that my husband wasn't supportive. He didn't know how to exist in those spaces.
Hmm.
Um, and so you were one of those persons that were instrumental in that, you know, and took me for what I was. Um, and I think part of the problem is that we're trying to get bullet points to life, and that's not how this thing works.
Hmm.
Our life is supposed to be a story that continues. And if we sat here and continue to conduct our lives like a PowerPoint presentation, you can get
Hmm.
PowerPoint quality. You'll never get to that novel of a story that you desire for yourself. And I think that what it was for me is looking at myself, you know, in my family, we live a long time. Um, and when I say a long time, we over 100. And so
Yeah.
I didn't want to look back and be like, "Ah, I wish I would have been able to do this or that." And, you know, so many people talk about it, but I had a
Hmm.
true fear of the what ifs and if I never. I don't
Hmm.
want to wonder that. So I'm just going to go do it because that fear
Mm.
is greater than me staying comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a healthy way to tap into fear. We don't talk about that enough either. Yeah, I'm gonna lean into it, and then the part that's beautiful is we overcome it. We don't stay in that thing, and fear doesn't put food on the table, and it doesn't keep you nourished, and it doesn't pay the bills, and it doesn't do
Hmm.
what you need to do, and it doesn't allow you to serve the purpose that you're here to serve. But when you lean into it and you go through that process of leaning into fear, and that's where we get that journey of self-discovery. And so
Mm.
you in those spaces and you being willing to go with me, yeah, there was a true fear in having tears in my eyes or, you know, a sense of embarrassment because I'm used to being the strong woman or, you know, having the answers or coming to show up for somebody else. But you were consistently showing up for me no matter what I looked like that day.
Yeah. I mean, well, thank you for sharing that space with me. First off, I consider it such a sacred space, and I love our sessions together. And it brings me to what I firmly believe is that being in a shared space, being patient with one another, being in communion with one another, like this is where true change happens. It takes people, it takes time, it takes patience. It's we're in relation with one another. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we do, and that's where the growth is. And another point that you brought up is the idea of fear and how fear to me is fear acts as a road sign. It tells me where I need to go. You don't stay there, but I can guarantee you where there's fear, there's growth. Where
Mm-hmm.
there's fear, there is potential for you to change. And so I encourage anyone who's listening to think about the thing that terrifies them. What scares you so much about transitioning into tech?
Mhm.
Get comfortable with that. Find out what's there. Let your fear guide you as data and as information. Don't linger on it. Don't let it scare you.
Yeah,
But realize if you don't know where to go and you need direction, just look for the fear because that's
absolutely.
where it's going to be.
Speaking of fear, I thought I was about to sneeze. I was trying not to sneeze. I'm in there. All right.
Oh, bless you. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. Let me ask one final question. I mean,
Just one, Corey?
this conversation has been so wonderful. I thank you so much for being here. I think the last one, oh, the last one, this will be a good one. In those
Yeah.
moments you wanted to give up, how did you push yourself to keep going?
The moments I wanted to give up, how did I push myself to keep going? I've gotten through 100% of my worst days. What else was going to happen?
Hmm,
This is just another opportunity for me to inspire myself and clap for myself and again show up for me.
hmm,
And I think that my fear of mediocrity outweighed my want to give up. I know that as a scientist, a thing that stays stagnant doesn't grow and it dies.
hmm,
I'm not ready for that. And I'm not ready to give up on myself. And I'm surely not throwing in a towel and just waiting for my time. I
hmm,
think that's poor stewardship of the opportunity in life I've been given. Um, and so when I compare the excuses for wanting to give up to the reality of what I can become,
hmm.
that far outweighs me throwing in the towel, so to speak. And that keeps me going.
That's great. Oh, do you have any final thoughts or words for our listeners tonight?
Um, I don't know. I think there was a lot. There's already a lot to probably digest in this conversation. I know
Hmm,
it probably didn't go the way you anticipated or planned.
hmm,
But this is a very real conversation, and I hope that if you feel like this is impossible, you'll never find out if you don't take a chance.
hmm,
Um, if you have a fear, use that as a sign to identify the insecurity and lean into that sucker.
hmm,
We hear don't make excuses or you just got to be disciplined. Put some parameters in place that are non-negotiable, like to the point to where you're going to stand 10 toes flat in that thing and say, this is happening no matter what. Um, for me, it was easy to hide behind my husband and my kids and my responsibilities, but it was difficult to swallow the reality of potential mediocrity. And the greatness that you're looking for is already in that atmosphere. You just got to step into it.
hmm. Excellent points. I think you pretty much just summed up our conversation in four digestible bullet points.
Hey, but don't use those bullet points for life.
Oh, that's so
Be a
wonderful.
novel, not a PowerPoint.
And as far as this conversation goes, what's beautiful about this conversation is it goes back to that brick wall analogy, right? We got together, we set the intention to come together and share space, and what came out of it, no, it doesn't look like these 20 questions I had listed, but what came out of it naturally from us being courageous and vulnerable with one another is beautiful to me. That's what art is. That's what it means to connect. And so I just want to thank you for being here with me openly and honestly and sharing this space with me.
Yes, anytime, Corey. Y'all, message Corey on LinkedIn. Don't wait. Take that chance. He is one of your biggest cheerleaders and will be even if you don't have anybody else in your corner. Yeah, just take the step. I think it's without question. If you've taken the time to take a listen to this conversation, you've already shown yourself that you're committed to the change that you desire. So, Corey, you're the best.
Oh, thank you,
I can't wait
Mercedes.
to see what happens from this.
I appreciate it. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for listening. And bye bye.
Bye.